Hello, everyone. I'm Jane Hansen. This week in the arena, according to the 2011 Yearbook of American and Canadian Churches, just released in February, church membership for more than a third of the nation's largest churches declined last year, while non-Orthodox Christian churches are on the rise. What's happening with membership and attendance in the Catholic Church? We're constantly hearing trends that churches are being forced to close. The question, how can we bring parishioners back? Joining us now to discuss this, Monsignor Kieran Harrington, the Director of Communications for the Diocese of Brooklyn, and our in-studio guests, Father Edward Doran, pastor of St. Charles Borromeo Church in Brooklyn Heights, and John O'Malley, the Professor of Marketing at NYU. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. Let's just talk about the scope of the problem. From what you've told me, Monsignor, the largest religion in the country may soon be that of ex or former Catholics.
Yeah, which is really scary when you consider that the stickiness of our faith is sort of kind of coming apart, and that's really what enables people to be sustained throughout their life. So it's not simply a matter of being baptized, but that the sacraments really sustain one in the growing knowledge of their faith and their relationship with Christ throughout the rest of their lives. And so it really is incumbent upon all of us to do a better job to ensure that people who, once they are baptized, once they have received the sacraments, they continue to learn to practice their faith and grow in an appreciation of their faith.
Hence, Father Doran, when you got to St. Charles, you discovered that there was a lot of need there to bring people back in. And so you began a kind of different kind of approach.
I did. When I arrived, I found some of the pews to be empty. And I said to the people, ladies and gentlemen, we have to work together to fill these pews. We have a wonderful, beautiful church here. We have a spirituality that is replete with aids that can be of great assistance. How can we draw back those who used to be here or those who are new to the community and really would like and benefit from receiving the spiritual enrichment that a church like St. Charles Borromeo would offer?
And then as a marketing person, John, you then took a different kind of look at it. First of all, you really examined what is it that's causing people to not come to church.
Well, absolutely. When Father says that he had some empty space in the pews, let me just correct him. We have a lot of empty spaces in the pews.
Right. As most churches do these days.
And so as I sat there, I said, you know what we have to do is we have to use business techniques to invite people back into the church and rediscover a brand. And Father Doran gave me permission to go ahead. Do what you think you need to do. And so we began to look at it, and again, not just me, but other people in the parish, to try to use some business techniques to really rebrand or recommunicate or use different now methods to reach out to the different demographic groups that we want to reach, but we weren't reaching.
Okay, but so first you kind of had to figure out what's the problem here, though. Like, why aren't they coming? Why are those seats all empty? And what was that process?
In my perception is that they were meeting their spiritual needs in other venues and in other ways. Yoga, exercise. We have a rich, beautiful tradition that is almost inside of a box. And the box was St. Charles Borromeo Church. And I wanted to open the doors to let people come in and realize the richness and the beauty and the strength of the tradition that is there. So I literally blew the doors open. If you are there during the summer, I insist the doors be wide open. And anybody walking by, I consistently tell the ushers, let them come in. Please let them come in. To savor the ambiance, the stained glass, to see the services, to see vibrancy in life, to see people in the building. That's one element of it. I think the other element of it is that people don't know exactly how to reconnect. And I challenged the community to welcome everyone. I consistently said, take home a bulletin, give it to your neighbors, give it to your friends, give it to your enemies, and they won't be enemies anymore. In other words, I'm trying to, the call of our baptism is that all of us are involved in evangelization. And that's where John came in with some of his ideas, business ideas, that we're a great help.
But simple rebranding isn't going to get people to say, I'm not going back to that church that I'm mad at, or that church that has failed me in some way, or that church that just doesn't work for my needs today, Monsignor.
Right. I don't think that that's really the cause. And in fact, what many studies indicate is that people really lapse, that somehow they fall out of the practice of going to church. It's not that they leave the church for a particular reason, that they had a fallout with a priest, or even most recently the priest scandal. It doesn't drive people out of the church, but simply they get out of the practice for whatever reason of going to church. And once they fall out of that practice, they just don't reconnect. And our challenge, I think, is to kind of encourage people who have lapsed in the practice of their faith to once again take up the growing in their faith and by attending church and taking advantage of the sacraments.
So, John, I know you said you were telling a story about this phrase, nun-Catholics. What's that mean?
Again, the earlier comment, the largest growing religion is Catholic nuns, not N-U-N-S, but N-O-N-E-S. They identify themselves as Catholics, but they don't practice it on a regular basis, and yet they believe they're Catholic. They identify themselves as that, but they don't practice it going to church or anything else of that nature. They'll call themselves spiritual, but what does that mean? And so a lot of the challenges is at least they identify themselves as Catholics. Now, how do we bring them back, and how do we make the church relevant to them in the local parish? Because each parish has a separate mission. And so a lot of it is, for us at St. Charles, we had an awareness problem. People didn't even know where the church was, yet it's been there from 1869 because we assumed that everybody knew where the church was. Mm-hmm. But we forgot that the neighborhood change became professional.
Right.
So there's a changeover, and yet we weren't communicating it or, quote, advertising. And so we did it. Now, once they came in, the product was there.
So when you use the word rebranding, I mean, you put this whole PowerPoint together that's all about how to rebrand a church. When you say brand, it's really not so much branding as it's just using another phrase for come in.
Yes.
I think that one other thing that you did, though, is that you really recognized that you weren't going to schedule services and sacramental administration around your calendar,
right,
but rather around a calendar that met the needs of the people who lived in the community. Maybe you can speak to that.
Well, an example would be we have a Sunday night at 7 p.m. It's a very convenient Mass. It serves the Brooklyn Law School students whose library closes at 6:30. It serves the community that is at their summer homes and returning late. It serves the community that is at the beach during the summer. We were finding that the 5 p.m. Mass was in competition with the other churches in the area, rather low attendance. 7 o'clock, we had 122 this Sunday. We've gone as high as 200, 225. It provides an opportunity for an alternative at an hour that isn't traditional, but an hour that seems to meet the needs of a large segment of people.
It seems so logical. Mm-hmm. Why doesn't that happen everywhere?
You have to think of it in terms of demographics now, okay? You have to think of church, and again, I go brand, and I don't mean it, okay? But if you remove the word church and put in brand, there's so much literature in the business world about you have a brand, okay? We have looked at our segmentation, demographics, and said, let's target what we need to target. And so by moving a Mass from 5 to 7, and Father took a lot of heat for it, okay, because the traditional people like, no, 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 we picked up young people who want to come to church, which meant to us that it's there, but we have to invite them and reach them and meet them when they need to go, mm-hmm, or when they want to go. And that's a whole different approach.
And it's not that you just simply met them, right? Because they're continuing, those young people, you were mentioning that those young people are continuing their faith even after Mass in enrichment.
In the Awakening Faith program, at the end of the 7 p.m. Mass at 8 p.m., we have approximately 20 to 25 young people and senior people and middle-aged people who are part of a discussion group on faith issues. This weekend we discussed reconciliation. We had a discussion group on the Spirit, the church, what is the church? And we have 20 to 25 people at the conclusion of Mass giving an hour and a half, an hour and 15 minutes to continue their faith development.
What do you say to people who say, oh no, you're just trying to make things convenient? Because I'm sure you heard that a lot, and we can't be just convenient Catholics.
Well, it is true that I'm trying to make things convenient, but the convenience is necessary because the schedules of people today are very, very full and very busy. It's not that they don't want to partake. It's that their limitation of their hours. People working retail work until 6 p.m. Law school students need library research. So providing an opportunity that meets their needs is convenient for them, and it benefits me. So I don't apologize.
That's what we call it, a win-win. We are going to take a break, and we'll be right back to continue the discussion, because I know there are some other aspects of this branding that you've done that I think people will be fascinated with. So we're going to take a break for just a moment, but we want to invite you to weigh in on our discussion anytime by going to our website at netny.net and click on Enter the Arena. We welcome your questions and comments, and we will be right back. Welcome back as we continue our discussion on how to bring people back to the church. And John, what I'm curious about is you seem to have taken some very modern techniques and applied them to a very old traditional kind of church. Is that basically what's going on here?
I looked at, we have, in our Catholic faith, we have such great traditions that in a lot of ways I said what we're not doing in some ways is inviting people to come and explore. And Father, basically, when he appealed to all of us and said, I need help, it basically awoken me, and I said, I can do this, and I want to do this, and he gave me permission to do it, and because as he said, he's only one guy, and he needs to fill up pews. And so I said, this is what I can do. I took what I do at NYU, and I said, this is what we need, and this is what I'm going to do.
But you did not become head of the evangelization committee.
Jane, when Father asked me, I said, there is no way I'm becoming the head of evangelization, but I'll become the marketing director. And yet, you know, and I think that's an issue in some ways, because I still struggle with it quite candidly, because do we evangelize as Catholics? And the answer is, no, the guys in the collars do. The rest of us don't. And yet, if we market it, are we not doing the same thing? And so in a lot of ways, I knew that in order to reach different people, when you use marketing, I could reach students or other professionals who do this as a job and yet didn't feel that moment of awkwardness, and that's something that we have to overcome. And so everything I do here is evangelization, but we don't call it that. And so we get results, so who cares?
That's true. Father, it was really important to you, this issue of transparency.
I think part of why people pull back from the church is the belief that we have plenty of money. And I really think we're accountable to the people. I view myself as the steward of the parish, and I owe it to the people to let them know how their resources are being used. And resources certainly are the financial. I've reached out and explained that we need their help. The stewardship of time and talent is equally important to the stewardship of funds. So I'm always attempting to report back to the people, letting them know how are things going, how are we doing. And I think that's very, very important.
So you're taking away any kind of secrecy?
Correct. Okay. I think that's...
Now what I've noticed in your plan is that you have in here little things like making sure the bathroom has been renovated. I mean, what's the significance of that? What does that have to do with bringing people back to the church?
Okay. You have people, when you look at churches, we just assume people would show up. But let's think of a young parent who has a small child, okay? What is very important to them is a sense of comfort. So when we looked at something as simple as a bathroom, it was like needed work. It just said that two things: we're alive, we're going to make this happen, and we're going to think about the things that we don't think about attending, but to a parent with a child, it's very important. So it was a symbol, and it was a sign that we were alive and vibrant, and we were willing to listen to you. And it made a big difference. People commented. You would think it had nothing to do with it, but people were like, wow, Father, the bathroom. Okay? And he's like thinking, what? But again, it said, with his leadership, look what we're listening to you.
And it wasn't rocket science. It was not rocket science at all. We tiled the bathroom. We made sure that it was spotlessly clean. The changing of the towels, the paper towels. In other words, when you went in, you felt a sense of comfort and cleanliness. If you had to bring the children in, there was no embarrassment. I think simple things like that help.
Well, you also did, you built a garden alongside
Correct.
the church. I mean, a lot of physical things that I guess touch us and bring somebody an aura almost of, well, this place is it seems like it will bring me in.
The garden was a wonderful enterprise by a group of parishioners who are talented in that area. And we invited them to take surplus plants from their garden and share them with ours. It was an area next to the church that was overgrown, that wasn't very well used. So essentially, we got parishioner volunteers to come in and clean it up and make it really nice. We put benches around. It's a wonderful place.
And you know what it really did also? It said to the community that St. Charles is alive, and it sent the message to the neighborhood that we cared about our facility. And for those parishioners who stood up and said, I want to take care of the garden, a deeper bond began to, because all of a sudden, Father's not out there digging, okay? They're digging. And all of a sudden you realize that they took ownership, and again, stewardship. That's what they wanted to do, and it made only the facility look better, and yet people noticed. And that's really what it is.
Okay, now you guys walk around with these cards that really, they talk about the church.
Correct.
And you have them at the back of the church, you hand them to people. The theory is...
Okay. The theory is, and there's a couple things. If you had a business or a brand, do you not have a business card? Father, do you have a business card?
I do.
Jane, do you have a business card?
Of course.
Why
I got
doesn't
a
the Catholic
couple.
Church have a business card? Okay. So we came up with a logo because what I wanted to do, what brand doesn't have a new logo? Every brand has a logo. So instead of just putting the face of the church, what I came up with was a logo that said we're a historic church in a historic neighborhood, and we're not old, we're vital, we're tradition. And so a lot of ways people were startled that we did this. And the premise is this, and again, it came from one of the parishioners who funded the cards. Keep one or two in your wallet. So if somebody wants to be able to say, where's the church? You're not stumbling. You reach in and you hand one out. It's called hand one out or keep one handy.
Complete with map in the back. And
nobody knew where we were.
The logo has the Brooklyn Bridge in the background.
It has
too,
the
which
website. But
which is
again,
cool.
people, we had to teach people that it's okay to evangelize, or are you marketing?
Let me pick up also to mention the web page, and it's clearly identified here. When the web page was begun, I knew it's a vital way of helping people to come inside of our church and see the beauty of the church. Then I discovered something called Google rating. So I pleaded with the parishioners to hit on a web page at least once a day.
And you did this from the pulpit.
The web page for St. Charles, by the way, and please look at it, www.stcharlesbklyn.org. Hit on it, please, at least once a day.
And on that webpage, you've also learned to use video and visual effects and things that will again bring people a message.
Monsignor, you're head of communications. What do young people, how do they communicate now?
Facebook, texting.
That's right.
Social media.
Social media. Now here's the other thing.
Internet.
People also are shopping for churches or faith traditions. Our website was flat. Why are we not talking to them in the way they communicate? A 1.5-minute YouTube video says, we introduce Father, you introduce the church, we introduce something. So somebody is sitting at their desk or their cell phone and looking, up comes our church, here's what it is, you feel a sense of comfort. It's a new way to communicate. We're not changing liturgy. That's his job. He runs the same liturgy that the church has always spoken about. What we've done is invited you to come and walk in the door. Once you're in the door, now feel the church and see what we're trying to do. The hardest part, and you're aware of it, get them off the sidewalk and get them through the first door.
Maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the programs that you're offering to kind of keep people connected to St. Charles.
The most recent program is Awakening Faith. It's a program originated by the Paulists, and it's a wonderful opportunity based during the Lenten season. One of the themes is church. What is church? Reconciliation. Can we be forgiven? The Spirit. What is that? Who is Jesus? We bring together 8 to 10 parishioners, providing them with leadership discussion focused on a topic. We have a handout on that topic. It's geared and keyed to the Catholic Catechism, and it provides an hour and a half for people to talk about faith. I promoted it during the Super Bowl season, saying, ladies and gentlemen, we talk about sports, we talk about politics, we talk about the weather. Now we're going to learn how to talk about religion.
And how many people are part of that?
76 signed up and
Wow.
are participating.
And I understand that your homilies are really quite something to catch.
My homilies are interesting.
Well, can you give us a phrase, perhaps?
The homilies that I use are perhaps delivered in a way that might not be traditional. Having been a teacher for all of my life, I walk up and down the aisles of the church. I spend approximately 15 to 20 hours to prepare a 10-minute homily. I prayerfully rework what is it the Lord would like me to say, and I try to employ as many connections to literature, to plays, to music that could make the message more relevant to this day and age and more practical in its orientation.
And you need to be putting those on YouTube, right?
In effect, we do have them on the website, but we haven't filmed them in the full 10 minutes. But those projects are called Down the Road.
Right.
But a lot of things, again, from the Paulus program, we are going to try to take a flat pamphlet and put it on the video in a minute and create our own kind of catechism that way.
Wow, you guys have got so many projects in the work. It's really incredible. I think that there are other churches and parishes that could probably learn a lot from this process. So we thank you so much for sharing it with us. Father?
My pleasure.
Thank you. John?
It's a pleasure to be here.
Appreciate it.
Monsignor?
And we are going to be right back. We're going to take a break, but we'll continue our discussion with some final thoughts. So stay with us. Welcome back to In the Arena. Continuing our conversation, we're once again joined by Monsignor Kieran Harrington, the Director of Communications for the Diocese of Brooklyn, and our regular contributors, Elizabeth Scalia, Managing Editor of the Catholic Portal at Pathos.com, and Grant Gallicho, Associate Editor of Commonweal Magazine. Hey, welcome, guys. So what do you think about this whole branding idea?
Oh, well, I think it's creative, and it seems like it's really effective, and I hope that it's something that can be translated into parishes that maybe are not quite as
Upscale or as
had quite as many resources at their beck and call.
Yeah, but maybe those other parishes that may not have that same kind of wealth of professionals in a community, maybe they could find other ways, other skills that their parishioners would have. You're shaking your head, Grant.
Yeah, I mean, I think the strategy that they have of getting online, getting a business card, getting the word out, that's huge. I know at my own parish, when I first started going there, I went online and I tried to find a website, and I found some information in Google, but the phone number was wrong, and so I mean that kind of stuff is really basic, and I think basically anywhere you go that will help. I don't know that every parish is going to, be able to have the kind of success that they've had, and it's very impressive. It's a great model, but it really relies on a certain kind of neighborhood to make that work.
Well, they basically doubled the congregation. And I would actually suggest that in that neighborhood, it might be more difficult. I mean, certainly the people in that neighborhood would have a lot more demands upon their time and certainly affluence to engage in other sorts of activities. So it is kind of interesting that while they would have certainly the resources to do other things and maybe interest and inclination to do yoga and go to the Met and that sort of thing, I think that what they've done is pretty remarkable.
Well, what about, I mean, some of it seems so simple, like the changing of the Mass time to 7
That
o'clock
was very
on
striking
Sundays.
to me. I was saying to Grant while we were watching, there's a neighboring parish from where I live that has an 8 o'clock Saturday night Mass, and it's packed. And you would think, who wants to go to Mass at that hour? But it's everybody who's gotten done with their sports or their shopping or their errands for the day, and maybe they want to sleep in on Sunday, or maybe their kid has a game or something, and they aren't going to squeeze it in any other time. And you go to that 8 o'clock Mass, it's crowded. I mean, the pews, there's no room.
So revisiting some traditions that worked for other old habits that may not work in today's world is maybe one step for parishes.
I think so. I think the first thing is it's really the convenience of the people, not the convenience of the priest, which is a big challenge, especially when there's a time where there's a diminishing number of priests. So a lot of priests are stretched thin, but clearly, Father Doran is really going the extra mile for his parishioners. And I think that that's really what's critical for each of us. I think the second thing that's clear from Father Doran is, here's a guy who was at St. Francis Xavier in Park Slope and took an assignment at St. George Magellan, which is a very different type of neighborhood, much poorer neighborhood, more greater immigrant community. Here's a guy at an older age, so he's certainly looking for a lot of stimulation. I think that that's another challenge. So it really is dependent upon priestly leadership, but it's also dependent on the support that the congregation gives him, and clearly he has that at St. Charles.
Yeah, but one of the things that John O'Malley, the marketing guy, said, Father allowed us, gave us permission to do it, and sometimes that doesn't happen in parishes.
Yeah, it's a question of giving up control, that you really need to be able to give over control. This is where I do think that where Grant and Elizabeth do have a point, that in a place like Brooklyn Heights, people might have more natural resources to kind of contribute to projects. But I do think that that's where we all have to go, to give up more control.
Elizabeth?
No, I agree with you, but I think that there's the other side of that, though, is that in a poorer neighborhood you might have people who are more predisposed to want something from the church, and there's just a connection that's not being made.
And what struck me was the physical things that they did, the fixing up of the bathroom, the cleaning of the altar
Opening the
regularly,
doors.
opening the doors, the garden. Simple, and anybody can do that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
we have a local parish that's always locked up. It's so unwelcoming. You can never just walk in.
Last thoughts, Grant?
I think it's clear that it's not just the strategy that's working, but as John said, it's the product. So there's so people are getting into Mass. They're having a very positive experience. I bet you the homilies are good. So I think that's a very important thing. Get our homilists trained and moving people.
Yeah.
Last thoughts from you?
No, I think that's clear. And you heard him say he spends 15 to 20 hours a week on a 10-minute sermon. If we all could do that, it would be pretty impressive.
Also, the fact that it's 10 minutes.
That's exactly what I was going to say. 7 to 10 minutes. If you have to go beyond that, you've lost everybody.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you guys so much, Grant, Elizabeth, Monsignor. Appreciate it. And thank you all for being with us. And remember that you don't need a TV to watch the net. We are always online at netny.net. For all of us here, I'm Jane Hanson. We'll see you next time in the arena.